Hello there. Hello, Mary, Ellen, and Evelyn. You were the first ones up today. I'm so glad you're all here. Welcome, everyone. I'm Gildart, and this is another Fireside Reading. We're reading Siddhartha at the moment, and we're going to read the first half of this chapter today and the second half tomorrow. And then it's the weekend, which I'm going to take off. As I do these days. We started with reading 7 days a week back in the COVID days, but now we've graduated to just reading on the weekdays at 5 Pacific. And if you're new, welcome. I'm so glad you found us. We just very simply read a chapter of a book every day, or part of a chapter. And over the course of a period of time, we end up reading these books. And we've read many books now. Actually, I don't know how many. But we've read many books. Several of them are up on YouTube. You can get some of them at firesidereading.com or on Tubi or various other ways you can get streaming things. And I love doing it, and I am glad for your company. Welcome to a Fireside Reading of Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Chapter 8. Part 1, By the River. Siddhartha walked through the forest, was already far from the city, and knew nothing but that one thing, that there was no going back for him, that this life, as he had lived it for many years until now, was over and done away with, and that he had tasted all of it, sucked everything out of it, until he was disgusted with it. Dead was the singing bird he had dreamt of. Dead was the bird in his heart. Deeply he had been entangled in samsara. He had sucked up disgust and death from all sides into his body like a sponge sucks up water until it is full. And full he was, full of the feeling of being sick of it, full of misery, full of death. There was nothing left in this world which could have attracted him, given him joy, given him comfort. Passionately, he wished to know nothing about himself any more, to have rest, to be dead. If there only was a lightning bolt to strike him dead, if there only was a tiger to devour him, if there only was a wine, a poison with which to numb his senses, bring him forgetfulness and sleep, and no awakening from that. Was there still any kind of filth he had not soiled himself with, a sin or foolish act he had not committed, a dreariness of the soul he had not brought upon himself? Was it still at all possible to be alive? Was it possible to breathe in again and again, to breathe out, to feel hunger, to eat again, to sleep with a woman again? Was this cycle not exhausted and brought to a conclusion for him? Siddhartha reached the large river in the forest, the same river over which, a long time ago, when he had still been a young man and came from the town of Gautama, a ferryman had conducted him. By this river he stopped. Hesitantly he stood at the bank. Tiredness and hunger had weakened him, and whatever for should he walk on, wherever to which goal? No, there were no more goals. There was nothing left but the deep, painful yearning to shake off this whole desolate dream, to spit out this stale wine, to put an end to this miserable and shameful life. A hang bent over the bank of the river, a coconut tree. Siddhartha leaned against its trunk with his shoulder, embraced the trunk with one arm, and looked down into the green water which ran and ran under him, looked down and found himself to be entirely filled with the wish to let go and to drown in these waters. A frightening emptiness was reflected back at him by the water, answering to the terrible emptiness in his soul. Yes, he had reached the end. There was nothing left for him except to annihilate himself. except to smash the failure into which he had shaped his life, to throw it away before the feet of mockingly laughing gods. This was the great vomiting he had longed for, death, the smashing to bits of the form he hated. Let him be food for fishes, this dog, Siddhartha, this lunatic, this depraved and rotten body, this weakened and abused soul. Let him be food for fishes and crocodiles. Let him be chopped to bits by the demons. With a distorted face, he stared into the water, saw the reflection of his face, and spit at it. In deep tiredness, he took his arm away from the trunk of the tree and turned a bit, in order to let himself fall straight down, in order to finally drown. With his eyes closed, he slipped towards death. Then, out of remote areas of his soul, out of past times of his now weary life, a sound stirred up. It was a word, a syllable, which he, without thinking, with a slurred voice, spoke to himself. The old word which is the beginning and the end of all prayers of the Brahmins, the holy Om, which roughly means that what is perfect, or the completion. And in the moment when the sound of Om touched Siddhartha's ear, his dormant spirit suddenly woke up and realized the foolishness of his actions. Siddhartha was deeply shocked. So this was how things were with him. So doomed was he. So much he had lost his way and was forsaken by all knowledge, that he had been able to seek death. That this wish of a child, had been able to grow in him, to find rest by annihilating his body. What all agony of these recent times, all sobering realizations, all desperation had not brought about, this was brought on by this moment when the Om entered his consciousness. He became aware of himself in his misery and in his error. Om, he spoke to himself. Om. And again, he knew about Brahman, knew about the indestructibility of life, knew about all that is divine, which he had forgotten. But this was only a moment, a flash. By the foot of the coconut tree, Siddhartha collapsed, struck down by tiredness, mumbling Om, placed his head on the root of the tree, and fell into a deep sleep. Deep was his sleep, and without dreams. For a long time he had not known such a sleep any more. When he woke up after many hours, he felt as if 10 years had passed. He heard the water quietly flowing, did not know where he was and who had brought him here, opened his eyes, saw with astonishment that there were trees and the sky above him, and he remembered where he was and how he got here. But it took him a long while for this, and the past seemed to him as if it had been covered by a veil, infinitely distant, infinitely far away, infinitely meaningless. He only knew that his previous life, in the first moment when he thought about it, this past life seemed to him like a very old previous incarnation, like an early pre-birth of his present self, that his previous life had been abandoned by him, that full of disgust and wretchedness, he had even intended to throw his life away, but that by a river, under a coconut tree, he had come to his senses, the holy word Om on his lips, that then he had fallen asleep, and had now woken up, and was looking at the world as a new man. Quietly he spoke the word Om to himself. speaking which he had fallen asleep. And it seemed to him as if his entire long sleep had been nothing but a long meditative recitation of Om, a thinking of Om, a submergence and complete entering into Om, into the nameless, the perfected. What a wonderful sleep had this been! Never before by sleep had he been thus refreshed, thus renewed, thus rejuvenated. Perhaps he had really died, had drowned, and was reborn in a new body. But no, he knew himself, he knew his hands and his feet, knew the place where he lay, knew this self in his chest, this Siddhartha, the eccentric, the weird one. But this Siddhartha was nevertheless transformed, was renewed, was strangely well rested, strangely awake, joyful and curious. Siddhartha straightened up. Then he saw a person sitting opposite to him, an unknown man, a monk, in a yellow robe, with a shaven head, sitting in the position of pondering. He observed the man, who had neither hair on his head nor a beard, and he had not observed him for long when he recognized this monk as Govinda, the friend of his youth, Govinda who had taken his refuge with the exalted Buddha. Govinda had aged, he too, but still his face bore the same features, expressed zeal, faithfulness, searching, timidness. But when Govinda now, sensing his gaze, opened his eyes and looked at him, Siddhartha saw that Govinda did not recognize him. Govinda was happy to find him awake. Apparently he'd been sitting here for a long time and been waiting for him to wake up, though he did not know him. "I have been sleeping," said Siddhartha. "How did you get here?" "You have been sleeping," answered Govinda. "It is not good to be sleeping in such places where snakes often are and the animals of the forest have their paths. I, O sir, am a follower of the exalted Gautama, the Buddha, the Sakyamuni, and have been on a pilgrimage together with several of us on this path when I saw you lying and sleeping in a place where it is dangerous to sleep. Therefore I sought to wake you up, sir, and since I saw that your sleep was very deep, I stayed behind from my group and sat with you. And then, so it seems, I have fallen asleep myself, I who wanted to guard your sleep. Badly I have served you. Tiredness has overwhelmed me, but now that you're awake, let me go to catch up with my brothers." "I thank you, Samana, for watching out over my sleep," spoke Siddhartha. "You're friendly, you followers of the Exalted One. Now, you may go then." "I'm going, sir. May you, sir, always be in good health." "I thank you, Samana." Govinda made the gesture of a salutation and said, "Farewell." "Farewell, Govinda," said Siddhartha. The monk stopped. "Permit me to ask you, sir, from where do you know my name?" "Now," Siddhartha smiled, "I know you, O Govinda, from your father's hut, and from the school of the Brahmins, and from the offerings, and from our walk to the Samanas, and from that hour when you took your refuge with the Exalted One in the grove Jetavana." "You're Siddhartha!" Govinda exclaimed loudly. "Now I'm recognizing you, and don't comprehend any more how I couldn't recognize you right away. But be welcome, Siddhartha. My joy is great to see you again." "It also gives me joy to see you again. You've been the guard of my sleep. Again I thank you for this, though I wouldn't have required any guard. Where are you going, O my friend?" "I'm going nowhere. We monks are always traveling. Whenever it is not the rainy season, we always move from one place to another. live according to the rules of the teachings passed on to us, accept alms, move on. It is always like this. But you, Siddhartha, where are you going? Quoth Siddhartha, with me too, friend, it is as it is with you. I'm going nowhere. I'm just traveling. I'm on a pilgrimage. Govinda spoke. You're saying you're on a pilgrimage, and I believe you, but forgive me, O Siddhartha, you do not look like a pilgrim. You're wearing a rich man's garments. You're wearing the shoes of a distinguished gentleman, and your hair with the fragrance of perfume is not a pilgrim's hair, not the hair of a samana. Right so, my dear, you have observed well. Your keen eyes see everything. But I haven't said to you that I was a samana. I said I'm on a pilgrimage. And so it is. I'm on a pilgrimage. You're on a pilgrimage, said Govinda. But few would go on a pilgrimage in such clothes, few in such shoes, few with such hair. Never I have met such a pilgrim, being a pilgrim myself for many years. I believe you, my dear Govinda. But now, today, you've met a pilgrim, just like this, wearing such shoes, such a garment. Remember, my dear, not eternal is the world of appearances, not eternal. Anything but eternal are our garments and the style of our hair and bodies themselves. I'm wearing a rich man's clothes. You've seen this quite right. I'm wearing them because I have been a rich man. And I'm wearing my hair like the worldly and lustful people, for I have been one of them. And now, Siddhartha, what are you now? I don't know. I don't know it, just like you. I'm traveling. I was a rich man, and I'm no rich man any more. And what I'll be tomorrow, I don't know. You've lost your riches? I've lost them or they me. They somehow happened to slip away from me. The wheel of physical manifestations is turning quickly, Govinda. Where is Siddhartha the Brahman? Where is Siddhartha the Samana? Where is Siddhartha the rich man? Non-eternal things change quickly, Govinda, you know it. Govinda looked at the friend of his youth for a long time, with doubt in his eyes. After that, he gave him the salutation which one would use on a gentleman, and went on his way. We will resume with this chapter of Siddhartha tomorrow. Same time, 5 Pacific at Fireside Reading on Instagram. I do hope you're enjoying this book as much as I am. I will see you all tomorrow for the next half chapter. Until then, everyone do stay very, very well indeed.